Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers, coast to coast, the Gulf to the 51st state, or wherever, and around the globe. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take on video channels everywhere. You name it, we're there. And if you like this video, you like my thoughts, pass them on, please do. And hit the subscribe, and hit the like, and hit the little bell so you know when these are coming out. And I want to apologize to my audience for being absent most of the last 3 weeks. I think the last show was probably July 14th or somewhere in there. But it's been quite the topsy-turvy 3 weeks, which will be part of the rant story, which we're going to get to. And I have your founder's quote for you, too. I thought kind of coming back on after a few weeks off, I'm sure there's some of you who didn't miss me at all. Like, who? Who is that? I think it behooves us to catch up on lots of stuff that's going on right now, that's been going on the last week or two, because the world is topsy-turvy and the world is changing, folks. And my founder's quote, actually a quote from Charles Darwin, is right along those lines. Let me give it to you, because it's a great prelude to this show. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones that are most responsive to change, unquote, Charles Darwin. Think about that. Because we are in the midst of change. If you go back, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks, I did a whole show on the fourth turning, the convergence of all sorts of parallel cycles. And the last time it happened was 400 years ago. And I gave you the examples of what happened 400 years ago when the fourth turning, 80 years, the Kondratiev wave, 50 years, the war cycle, 100 years, etc., all converged the last time it happened. And I told you could just replace the names of the countries then, Spain, Portugal, France, Britain, with the names of the countries now. China, Russia, Iran, America, Israel. And you'd be pretty much in the same place, right? History is rinse and repeat. So today we're going to bring you up to speed on some of the chaos, the change which is going on like at the speed of light. Like, this is not a fire hose. This is a 36-inch siphon in full reverse. And we're going to divide this kind of monster rat-a-tat-tat to set up the next show, which is on the real estate markets, which I've been promising you for 4 weeks. We're going to divide this into international, domestic, elections, and economy. Because the elections, that's right, they're not quite even 18 months away anymore. It's more like 14 months. Yeah. And there's lots of stuff going on those fronts. Let me tell you about the rant story. So, there are 3 reasons that I was unable to do a video or a radio show the last 3 weeks. The first is there's been kind of an ongoing Yellowstone type situation going on here on the ranch, which, by the way, kind of rivals Yellowstone. Move over dozens. I can't get into the details now, but it'll be a future story, and I guarantee you it'll be a future plot in one of the books of the Threads West series. The second reason is we were at Cheyenne Frontier Days down in Cheyenne, Wyoming, signing lots of books, thousands of books. Absolutely terrific crowd, great vendors, great management. I mean, it was a delight, but it was busy. And basically, we had to stay in Laramie because Cheyenne, with 750,000 people going to the largest outdoor rodeo on the planet, gets a little crowded and booked up. So Laramie is an hour each way. So basically, you had to be up at 5:36 in the morning, get all your stuff done, get a little bit of work done that you could, and then be on the road. And the show started 9:30 every day, and it was over somewhere around 9:30 every night. And by the time you got back to Larrabee, it was 10:30, 11, and there was barely enough time to cook dinner and crash. So that's reason number 2. And then reason number 3 also ties into this ranch story. And that is my ranch hand, whom we hired 2.5 months ago, is of course entrusted with watching the ranch while I'm away. I mean, that's one of his jobs. I'm not away too often other than book signings. But he was a recovering alcoholic to whom I gave a chance. And he swore on 1,000 stack of Bibles and in holy God's name that he would never touch booze again. He was off the booze for 2 years and etc. But it seems that while the cat was away, the mouse would play. So he decided during this period in Cheyenne Frontier Days to, shall we say, fall off the wagon, with rather disastrous effects on the ranch, which I've been cleaning up for the past week. And there's even more to this story, but I'll save that for a future ranch story. And the moral of this story, all the tempest, the upheaval, the book signing, the falling off the wagon of the ranch hand while you are far away and have no control and have no knowledge until way too late, and the Yellowstone stuff that's going on here, move over Duttons, that's all kind of change, isn't it? Which goes right back to Darwin's quote. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So there you go. Okay, let's get into this because I got a lot to cover with you. And this will probably be the best condensed version of what's happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks and over the last few days and of the last few hours and maybe even the last few minutes that you're going to get anywhere. You've probably heard about some of this, but you haven't heard about all of it and not in one place. You know, the news is disjointed when they bring it to you and when it's true. International. Did you know that Israel is massing substantial military forces and armored forces at the border of the Gaza Strip? Boy, you can't find that anywhere, can you? Russia is building up its forces in Ukraine rather rapidly, particularly armored divisions, tanks, etc., and mobile launching platforms for drones and rockets. And they're busy moving, the Russians are, their mobile nuke stations. And they're doing it at night when it's much more difficult to detect. And China is whipping up the shall we say, animosity and the competition between Cambodia and Thailand. Cambodia's economy is not great. Thailand's is really not good whatsoever. It's a combination of tariffs, lessened exports, all sorts of things. We won't go there right now. I'm going to do a show on international economics, which nobody talks about in the United States, but which affects us every single minute and every single day and will more so in the future, i.e. change, in one of these upcoming shows. But China is busy stirring the pot in the South China Sea. They're also, shall we say, increasing their attack frequency against Philippine shipping. I don't know if you know that or not. And the exercises are ongoing and ever more encroaching in Taiwan, between Taiwan and China. In the international realm, an international enemy, in fact, a terrorist organization, and so designated by the president, are the cartels, and there's a number of them, the Sinaloa cartel and the Tren de Agua, etc. Well, Trump has decided he's had enough of this crap, with them using borders as protection. And the United States military has been ordered to take them on. And I think this will be mostly special forces, but it will be international in scope. So get ready for some, so we say, international fireworks, because, in the heat of battle, once you fire the first bullet, the plan is out the window. But good on him, and good on our boys, and may they all return safely. Let's kick a little cartel butt. Domestic. The National Guard has been ordered deployed by the president to 20 states, mostly red states, to help with the paperwork on deporting all the criminal and illegal, or both, aliens that have been rounded up by Tom Homan and his ICE crew and the Department of Homeland Security and Kristi Noem. And of course, the left is screaming, military occupation and, martial law, and but whatever. Anyway, that's ongoing. And the faster we get those folks out of the country, the better. And the Democrats should think about this because, if they hadn't let them in to begin with, then their so-called rights as intruders, lawbreakers, illegal aliens, and in the case of many, not all, usurpers of American prosperity and largesse would not be here to begin with. The National Guard's also been ordered into, this was just like today, by the president into Washington, D.C. Remember, Washington, D.C. is not a state. The District of Columbia is actually under the federal government's control. Even though it has a mayor and kind of a local government, it comes under the auspices of the federal government. He has ordered the National Guard into the streets there, and he has federalized the Washington, D.C. police. They are now federal agents. And he has vowed to eradicate homelessness and to stamp out crime and cartels and gangs. Good for him. Good for him. In California, Gruesome Newsom, the governor there, what a wonderful guy he is trying to basically gerrymander and redistrict California to wipe out Republican congressional seats, U.S. congressional seats. Not to be outdone, Texas is I'll have to call it what it is, gerrymandering and redrawing their district lines to increase Republican seats and decrease Democratic seats. And on top of all this, the president, and by the way, I brought this to you 4 years ago when Biden, a la Obama's third term, first started. The first thing he did was to order that the census include illegal aliens. Now think about that. The census, folks, that count drives federal monies that go hither, yither, and yon by population. And of course, it also determines by population how many congressional seats you have. You see the games that could be played. Well, as of now, illegal aliens are out of the census, which reduces the population in the census by somewhere between 12 and 20 million, and will drastically reshape the congressional maps of the entire United States. Now, there's going to be court challenges up the yazoo. I think there's already been like 5 filed by various groups, the ACLU, et cetera. But I think it's going to stick, and I hope so, because it's tantamount to maintaining this republic. In Texas, the Dems, to try and get out of a vote on the Texas House floor, left town illegally, and they're hiding out in Illinois and California. Well, gee, blue to blue. Well, Governor Abbott, whom I really like, does not take any nonsense. He takes no more nonsense than Mr. Trump does. And he has, number one, cut their pay. Number 2, their benefits. Number 3, their staff. Number 4, all their other privileges. He has signed and had his attorney general sign arrest warrants for them. And he has threatened, and this is going to be a huge legal nuclear winner, to remove them from their seats for dereliction of duty, etc. So the political games, folks, and the maneuvering And the movement of the chess pieces in this four-dimensional stop the election fraud chessboard is ongoing with a vengeance and picking up steam. I'll keep you informed. Tammy Bruce. I don't know if you folks know Tammy. She is absolutely terrific. She is a tiger, boy. And she is a conservative. She's been named as Deputy Representative for the United States to the United Nations by Trump. She still needs to be confirmed, but that would be great. She is one tough, smart cookie. Exactly the type of person we need representing our interests in a United Nations we shouldn't even be part of, we shouldn't be given a penny to, and which, shall we say, the deck is severely stacked against us. All right. Letitia James, you know, the New York Attorney General scumbag, corrupt Attorney General of that state, who went after Trump on all sorts of charges, which in the end got blown out the window. She is now under investigation for all sorts of fraud by the DOJ. Wow, here we go. And at the FBI, the three head honchos that were in charge of J6, deputy directors, I mean, that's pretty high up. That's right under Kash Patel, have been axed. They're out of there. Good for you, Kash. Good for you. And finally, the best of my domestic, our friend Barry Obama. It seems that a treasure trove of documents have been uncovered about Obama not only involved in or having knowledge of, but directing and orchestrating the entire Russian hoax against President Trump, which is treason. Okay, this is not just some federal tort or break of a federal statute, although there's plenty of that. This is treason. This is an attempt to overthrow the existing government of the United States. And part of the treasure trove of documents that were discovered by Kash Patel and his boys in what's called the burn cellar. This is where really sensitive documents are put in bags to be burned by FBI personnel. Well, it just so happens, I think it was 5 big bags of documents were found. And you know, it kind of screwed Obama's pooch. And there's now been a grand jury convened by the Department of Justice in the state of Florida, not in Washington, D.C., to investigate what charges should be brought against Obama, Hillary Clinton, our CIA buddy Brannon, James Clapper, and a host of other treasonous scoundrels that perpetrated this hoax at the expense of the Republic, at the expense of Donald Trump on a personal and individual basis, and at the expense of us all, both in terms of time, cost, and distraction. Think about what would have happened if things were not distracted at that time. What do you think might have happened in Ukraine? What do you think might have happened in Taiwan? What do you think might have happened with the economy? The damage that they cause to the government, the country, the Constitution, and the people needs to be dealt with, and people need to be held accountable. The problem with society today, and one of the reasons that some of the changes we are experiencing are, shall we say, less than benign, and certainly less fun than fun, is that a lot of people have done a lot of really bad things, and they haven't been held accountable. Maybe that's about to change. How about the economy? Okay. Now, you're hearing on the mainstream media, oh, new highs in the NASDAQ, the S&P, new highs, blah, 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 blah. You know, AI, rocking to the moon, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's some facts, the facts, Jack. And that is 1.5 million of the new jobs that were reported under Biden were fraudulent. They never existed. This puts a whole different complexion on the employment situation in the United States. And employment, folks, is what drives economies, particularly ours, because we are, so far, a consumer-driven economy. We consume. That's what creates GDP. If you don't have a job, you can't consume. There was a report of 73,000 new jobs last month in July, which, by the way, was almost half. I think it was 136 they were projecting. It only came out to 73,000. But that was followed 2 days later by downward revisions in May and June by the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics at the Labor Department, who was being run at that moment, just in June, 6 weeks ago, by the same pigeon that was put in place by Barry Obama in his third term through cadaver Biden. Well, she revised the figures for May and June down 258,000 jobs. That's 258,000 jobs. Let me tell you how big a deal that is. So in May, let me get my numbers exactly right here. In May, the BLS originally said it was 144,000 new jobs, kind of, a little bit better than projected. With the revisions, that 144,000 has become 19,000 new jobs in May. 19,000. And in June, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported 147,000 jobs. And with the revision, that went down to 19,000 jobs. This is in the entire United States of America. Why don't we just say that the propagation of false information on the employment front affects the decision-making at the Fed, which affects interest rates, which affects economy, which affects you and me, and affects national security. And it affects politics. And it affects polls and people's perceptions. And most of all, it affects many, many, many Americans who otherwise would be in a different situation if the folks who are supposed to be making the decisions, the Fed, the Commerce Department, etc., had the correct numbers. Garbage in, garbage out. And that's going to lead us, I think, to some rate cuts that were not anticipated in the coming months. Now, it may be too late. You don't cut rates when you're in a tailspin. You cut rates before you go into the tailspin. We're going to talk more about that in the coming weeks. In Canada, which is kind of a canary in the coal mine for us, unemployment, ours edged up to 4.2%. In Canada, it's gone up to 6.9%. That's pretty serious unemployment. And in July, the entire country of Canada, granted, much smaller than the United States, I think it's about 25 million, give or take, folks. The entire job creation in Canada was negative 40,800 jobs. Negative 40,800 jobs. In a really interesting development, one of the top economists at the Fed, his name is Weiss, wrote and published a paper on August 1. This is just, less than 2 weeks ago. And it's the first paper that the Fed has ever published on, hold on to your bippy, the revaluation of our gold, which right now is carried on the books at $42 and change. And gold, as you know, is in the 3,400 to 3,500 range, dipping down to the 3,300s, etc. But it's a hell of a lot more than $42 and change. This is really interesting, particularly because of the comments Trump has made and the comments that Secretary of the Treasury Basant has made, both of whom, by the way, happen to be gold bugs. And gold, as we know, is the longest running, most stable, real money currency in the world. 5,000 years of history. It has never let a country, a people, a person, or an economy down yet. This is worth watching. This is really interesting that the Fed has actually published a paper on revaluation. Okay. U.S. stocks Okay, everybody's in this FOMO. If you're in the stock market, listen, I'm not your financial advisor. You could do whatever you want. It's your money, it's your life. But if you are in this stock market right now, you need to have your head examined. That's my opinion, okay? There is nothing about this stock market that is not a frothing bubble. And the same was true with real estate before it started to turn over here about 6-9 months ago. And I want to tell you that the whole 9 yards here with the stock market is going to hurt a lot of people. Insiders are selling like crazy. In fact, at a rate not seen since the dot-com bust in 1999. And the AI and tech stocks are at a value, an earnings value, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a stock guy. That rivals the 1999-2000 dot-com bust. In fact, I think it's a little higher. And what a lot of people don't realize, because some of this stock market frenzy, undeserved, is being driven by foreign money, where you can't get quote unquote returns like you can in the United States. Here's what these folks haven't figured into their math. The United States dollar has gone down from 110, I think it was as high as 120 on the index of the dollar against all currencies, okay, the DYX. And it's now under 100. The Swiss franc has appreciated 10%. The dollar has dropped 10% relative to the franc. A number of other currencies have done the same. So if you think that you've made 10% in the United States stock market and you are a foreigner in most Western countries, think again. You've taken a lot of risk, but you haven't made a dime, because in terms of real money, purchasing power, your currency, whether you're in France or you're in Belgium or you're in Switzerland, the devaluation, the sinking of the dollar in terms of its of the ratio as to all other currencies on the planet has wiped out your gains. That's just reality. And in terms of Americans, the rate of inflation, which we all know is not 2.7%, right? Just go to the grocery store. That's wiping out your gains in the stock market. So I would implore all of you to give this serious thought if you happen to be invested in or heavily invested in the stock market. There's way more things to have your money in that are tangible, hard, not replaceable, and not determined by how good a cup of coffee some executive had on Wall Street on a Monday morning. That's just the hayseed's thoughts. Take them, leave them, do your own research. All right, that's the end of this, shall we say, comeback show. Again, I apologize for being off air for 3 weeks. Hopefully my brief description gave you a feel. We're going to go into more detail in the next show. The next show, by the way, will be probably Thursday, out Friday. I'm going to try and make up for lost time here and get you some more shows. We have the real estate market coming up. We have international currencies, which are huge, and international economies nobody's talking about coming up. And of course, I'll keep you abreast on all these change agents that are at play that we talked about today. You keep the wind at your back. We'll talk to you in a few days. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for listening. Hit that subscribe.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.